Good evening and welcome to the first Water and Sewer Commission meeting of 2023, new year. Welcome, everybody. Before we begin, I just want to remind everybody that the days are getting longer. It's a new year, new happenings as we have divided government in DC with gridlock and oppositional parties dueling it out. I just want to again remind everybody that we should be very proud to have civil local government with community engagement here in Richmond, something to be proud of. I understand we are now entering our 4th year of a worldwide pandemic, so I just stress patience and civility as we tough it out. We're doing a good job, and I trust that this will continue. And a note on crosswalks. When I was driving in tonight, I was going down Bridge Street. It's obviously a very dark, rainy night. I almost hit a pedestrian who was crossing in the crosswalk between the Spruce and the Hatchet. The crosswalk was not activated. So, I was cautiously driving, and all of a sudden I saw somebody and I stopped and we almost made contact with each other. But were I not paying attention and or I was driving any faster, it would have been more than shocking and upsetting. It would have been tragic. So friendly reminder to everybody, please use the crosswalk lights. They're there for a reason.
The button.
Yes. Fortunately, nothing happened tonight, but it certainly got me worried as to what could easily happen. So before we begin with tonight's meeting, would anybody either here in person or joining us virtually care to make a public comment?
I would have.
Okay, Kara, go ahead.
I just want to
Kara, don't forget to introduce yourself. Okay.
sit up here. Kara LaBounty. I just want to make the request. You guys are working on the audit, and I know it's on your agenda item later on that you're listening to any recommendations about how to make changes and improvements. There's one thing I'd like you to add to your agenda for future discussions is to review how you're collecting your meter data. My understanding is the last time I knew, and it could be have updated and changed, is that they actually do it by paper and they go around and read the meters and write it on a piece of paper, and then they bring it in and it's inputted into the system. And when I've been in the office back when Kendall worked for the town of Richmond, I'd been in the office before while he's reading numbers to Connie. And if you have your two of your highest paid individuals, one reading numbers to the other, it's not the most efficient system. So if there's meter readers, if there's smart meters, all of those different features that you can look into. And I'm not saying that you maybe invest in it all in the first year, but after a certain number a year should be in your plan to replace, upgrade, and change to make that system more efficient. So I know you're going through the process of doing the audit of number of business users, number of residential users. I'd like you to have that be part of your discussion, and that should save a lot of time. I also heard that because it's a paper version that they can't go read meters in the rain because they don't want the paper to get wet.
Point. Just very briefly, Josh and I did discuss or talk about the smart meters. Apparently, we are a little behind the times in that we are not using them. Yeah. And that it would be it's a lot of the meters are due to be replaced anyway. So it would be something to look at.
Go ahead, Bart.
This is probably the 4th time we've talked about this without progress. We talked about smart meters, we talked about tablets.
Yeah.
And sort of like we've gone around the barn a couple of times on this over the last 10-ish years. So this might be the time to actually.
And I think you've had a change in leadership in that department who might have been same thing for 35 years. Now you have the opportunity to make some changes, and you can make changes that are more efficient and productive for all, and maybe more cost effective.
Thank you for that. I agree. It would be pertinent to discuss this at a future meeting. I know we have talked in the past about streamlining and having a tablet-based reading system where the information is entered directly into the tablet, which would reduce the amount of duplicative efforts, recording it on paper and then transcribing it electronically. So definitely an item for a future meeting.
And I think with smart meters, you don't even need to read them.
Right.
Right.
It saves time, energy. You don't need tablets. It's a better. Anyhow, you'll get the information. We'll discuss it in a public meeting. And if you don't put it on another agenda, I'll keep reminding you.
Thank you for that. No, that should certainly come up at a future meeting. Anything else before we begin? Bart?
David, I just had an add-on to your story. somewhere in the last 3 or 4 days, I was crossing the street in Waterbury by the Prohibition Pig there, where there's the intersection.
On the hill.
In the evening, it was somewhere around 5 o'clock. The lights are on, it's well lit.
It is well lit there.
I was crossing towards the Prohibition Pig side, having parked on the other side of the road. And the point of this story is you have to have your wits about you as a pedestrian. So I'm walking and I can tell a car coming down the street from the intersection is not slowing down. So I stopped about 1.5 feet from the median line that's painted lines there. And the car went by me about 2 feet away, going 25 miles an hour.
Wow.
I was easy to see. I'm wearing a red coat among other things. And I don't know what the point of that story, other than drivers really need to be aware of pedestrians and crosswalks. And I think it is prudent maybe to remind people, even have signs up. I can't remember what the signs of the active crosswalks say, but to encourage use.
I mean, just as to say, push the button.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
all they're not doing is pushing the button.
But if people are on their phone, they will ignore somebody wearing bright flashing lights and reflective high vis yellow from head to toe, as I've had occasion to find out recently.
Yeah, I think we've all got stories. I have two recently. One with me in the car in Burlington, it's raining. I'm coming up to a stop sign and I mean, somebody dressed in black just didn't even stop, just walked in front of me. And it's pretty scary. Then the other was right here crossing. I hit the button flashing. I started walking out in the street and a guy on a smartphone looking down. So it's, you know, other than a hand that comes out and slaps you in the face, it's tough.
The dudes in the black hoodies with the hood on, so you have no peripheral vision. They're even scarier. Okay. Jumping into tonight's agenda. Josh, board, any additions or deletions to tonight's agenda? Josh is shaking his head no, and the room is quiet, so I will assume we are good to go. Moving on, item 3, items for presentation or discussion with those present. So the first thing on our agenda is consideration of rescheduling the first commission meeting in March of 2023. Town meeting is going to be held on the first Monday of March, which would mean that neither the Select Board nor the Water and Sewer Commission can hold their regular meetings on that date. The Select Board has decided to change their first March meeting to the next Monday, March 13th. It may be prudent for us, the Water and Sewer Commission, to follow suit. Thoughts?
That sounds good to me.
Feels right.
Yeah. Let's do it. Any objections there?
I move to reschedule the first meeting of March 2023 of the Water and Sewer Commission to Monday, March 13th, 2023, due to the conflict with town meeting on Monday, March 6th, 2023.
Thank you, Jay. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Morgan. Any further discussion? Are we ready for our first vote of 2023? Okay, calling the motion to a vote.
J.I.
Morgan, I.
Aaron, I.
Bard, aye.
And this is David. Aye. Our first regularly scheduled meeting for March will be rescheduled to March 13th, as we will be conducting business for town meeting day on March 6th. So the first March meeting of the Water and Sewer Commission will be Monday, March 13th, presumably at 6 o'clock, unless we have a heavy agenda, might bump it back to 5:30. Okay, thank you.
And question, but we'll keep the next meeting for the 20th, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Moving on to 3B, follow up on investigating stormwater connections to the wastewater system. Included in the packet is a draft letter to all water and sewer customers regarding stormwater connections to the wastewater system. Once this letter is approved by the commission, it can be sent to all users on the system. Questions, comments, thoughts on the letter? Jay?
I like the letter very much, but so people at home can know what we're talking about. Josh, could you share it? I have one change I'd like to make. And it's an easy change. At the third paragraph, we say the cost, this is the part where the person receiving it goes, what now? The cost of disconnection, reconnection of stormwater will be borne by the property owner. The ordinance allows for $1,000 fine. And then it says the commission will work with property owners to develop a reasonable timeframe. And then it ends with the goal of the commission is not to find customers. I would like to swap the third and the fourth sentence so that we get right to the point of we're not trying to find you and we will work with you rather than we will work with you. Oh, by the way, we don't want to find you. It's literally just swapping the last two sentences of that paragraph.
That makes sense.
Any other questions, comments, or thoughts?
One other suggestion I would make, David, in the second line, first sentence at the very top, connected to the wastewater system, perhaps we say the Richmond wastewater system, some modifier. So it's clear we're talking about the town.
Yeah, that makes
Sure.
sense. Maybe the Richmond wastewater municipal system.
Something like that. Yeah, I don't have an opinion, just I think it calls sort of for a modifier, so it's clear at the first sentence. Does that make sense to both?
Richmond municipal wastewater system.
A little extra clarity would be valued.
Any other thoughts, comments, questions, suggestions?
David, can I ask a question?
You sure may.
Carla Bond. The question I have is this for, you're sending this out to all customers? So this stormwater issue is not due to new connections necessarily. It's due to an existing system that's been in place. So this is a problem that the previous water and sewer, head of water and sewer was aware of. But this is the first time you guys are actually doing something about it in this sense. Thank you. Can I compliment you on that? Thank you. That's great. Do we have a calculation of when it storms, the different flow comparative to the normal average flow? And how big a difference is that of capacity? What percentage of capacity are we processing due to this stormwater issue? Because if you had any kind of calculation like that, that would be very informative to put in this letter for the people who are reading it. Like if you can say your bills are not so high because of this, but this is adding to why your rates are high is because we're having to process stormwater, which is taking an additional 10% of our capacity during
I
storms.
think it's actually more than that.
But Alan, would you comment?
You hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool. We actually don't have an exact amount on that, on how the difference is, but it is significant depending on how much rain you get.
I believe Kendall, when he first mentioned this a year or so ago, quoted a number of as much as 30% increase in flow during a heavy rainstorm. And we
That
just
sounds
had a
right.
pretty significant one like 2 weeks ago. So we should be able to look at those numbers.
Yeah.
I have a suggestion, Jay. Why don't we just say that, as much as estimated to be
Previously.
as much as,
Yeah.
yeah.
Sure.
Right.
Because I don't think we need to chase down the exact number
All right.
that's
I mean, it's just out
significant.
of curiosity at that point, but
Or we can chase it down, but we don't have to hold the
yeah, we
ladder.
could just say 30% and
Josh?
Yeah, I was kind of going along the lines of Barb that I think it's important to get the letter out and get the word out that we're going to be looking into these and have people kind of proactively look into them. I don't have any official data. Alan might have some official flow data that we could tie back to storms. I know Kendall texted me during a rainstorm a few months ago about how much it went up. So it's sort of anecdotal. I don't know that it's super scientific as far as like studying 10 different rainstorms to see kind of what the average is. So I guess I kind of hesitate to put numbers in here. I'd rather get the word out and we can try to work on some numbers because this is going to be something that's going to take some time to get the connections disconnected. So I think we can kind of follow back up with that as we've had a chance to look at actual numbers. I don't want to go out with a number and have it be wrong.
I think you're missing my point. It can be an estimate. You can say previously stated as an estimate in a previous meeting. Nobody's going to lock you to something that's saying previously stated as an estimate. I'm going to let you know, you'll get more buy-in if people think they get a benefit in the long run from doing this. If they think, oh God, I'm not gonna deal with this, I don't want anything to do with this. The fine isn't necessarily gonna scare them, because you're already saying you don't really want to fine people.
Yeah.
So you gotta get buy-in, and to get buy-in is saying, hey, this is a problem we're looking to solve. And it might impact your rates if we can get this problem solved.
Yeah.
I
Well, we do
just
have
think
enough
we have
information to show that there's a clear correlation between storms and increased flow. And we know that all of that usage is usage not going through a meter, but it has to be processed, so.
I think estimated as much as 30%, something
Yeah,
like that. It
I'm
doesn't
okay
have
with
to be
that.
scientific, but it's
During the
like,
storms.
yeah, during a heavy rainstorm.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Alan or Josh, that it seems like there was also potential of too much flow could cause some sort of a environmental accident.
It could surpass the amount that the plant is capable of handling. And not only wreck the plant, but also cause overflow.
Josh?
So, yeah, and I did, I did note both of those, that increased flow puts added stress on the wastewater system, increased treatment costs, increases staff time, could lead to a discharge of untreated wastewater, which is an environmental hazard. I could follow up with during recent rainstorms, we've seen as much of a 30% increase in flow to the system. Reducing this flow will reduce the cost and ultimately reduce the rates. I think something like that can kind of help drive it home and kind of repeat the fact that this could save you some money in the long run.
I would
Thank
you.
caution you about using a number like 30% unless you've got like something that says actually 30%. Because we want to put all our trust in you guys. So make sure you've got a 30% to back that up.
Bard, this is Bard, Meg. I think what we're quoting is the previous water and sewer superintendent's public statement.
Oh, then fantastic. Then I'm totally with you. I just didn't want it to be like a shot in the dark number.
Any other questions or comments or concerns on the draft letter?
No.
Are we ready to
So-
move it? Go ahead, Josh.
Just to so you guys on the plan, I'll add that line in, talk about the 30% estimate. And then I think we'll plan to get this out in the bills that are going out shortly here in January. So that way everybody will get it and we can start the process if that works for the commission.
Okay.
Mhm.
You don't need a formal vote on this, right? Just a nod from the board to
No, I
send it
don't.
out?
I don't think so. I just wanted to make sure I got some feedback from the commission and the public to make sure that everything is in there that we want in there, and we'll proceed. Thank you all.
Okay, thanks, Josh. Any other questions or comments on the letter or the stormwater? Okay, moving on. Okay, consideration of recommending that the select board approve the bond documents for the water line replacement project on Tilden Avenue, Bridge Street, and Cochran Road. So included in the packet is are the bond documents for the above mentioned project. The select board is the body that needs to approve these to go to a bond vote. But since this is a water and sewer project, a recommendation to approve from the Water and Sewer Commission is typically obtained before the select board vote. So as a municipal system, a utility, the water and sewer users will be paying this bond back if the bond is approved and the bond goes through. But the Water and Sewer Commission needs to have a bonding vote through the town, which would go through the select board, which is why this board would ask the select board to bond that. Any questions or comments, Bard?
David, one question on the actual document, the necessity resolution. That's what we're looking at, right?
Yes.
In the third paragraph, now therefore, and the end when it says at an aggregate cost of, isn't that an aggregate cost not to exceed, Josh?
So the aggregate cost not to exceed. I just lost my place, 1,900,000.
So that's the ballot. And then there's also the necessity resolution. They don't say the same thing. I guess it doesn't really matter, but
Right in there.
it's very subtle, but it's, as opposed to an exact figure, it's an up to figure in both locations. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, I'm noting that down here, it does say an aggregate not to exceed $1,900,000.
That we
I
don't.
don't know why the attorney didn't put that also up here.
It's not a big deal. It struck me that in some places it says one and the other says an exact figure.
Yeah. I wonder if it's because up here they're talking about the estimated cost of the project, and then down here they're talking about the actual bond that will be not to exceed the 1.9 million. Maybe there's a subtle difference between each resolution.
So in the third one, then it might say at an estimated aggregate cost. It seems like it's just missing a modifier. Maybe I'm missing it.
So
As
there
a
is in this one estimated here.
No, it's in the next paragraph.
I-
So
I know,
We
I
have-
was just saying, yeah, so down there it's not estimated or not to exceed. I mean, we could go back to the attorney and ask them before the board votes on it if you'd like, or, I mean, I tend to think it's probably gonna
voting on it,
mean
it
the
just
same
comes
thing.
out.
Yeah. Somebody not familiar with the project, reading that in layman's terms, it could be interpreted that we're obligated to spend $1,900,000 and not a penny less.
And in the other places, it is either estimated or not to exceed. And I was just looking for
Mhm.
internal consistency. I mean, it's not a big deal.
Yeah, I see Bart's point, especially with the confusion of the authority of who to borrow what and who pays it back. It might be better if that were spelled out more clearly and
So we-
consistently.
So we just put the word estimate between and aggregate.
I think so.
Okay.
Okay, so I think, yeah, I think we could probably handwrite that in and still get it signed. I think would be fine. We can kind of keep things on track. We'll bring it up at the select board meeting too, to make sure that the board agrees, although 3 of the members are here right now.
And I don't want to slow it down. I think we should move it forward tonight. It was really a sort of housekeeping in the document. That when you have a contract that says 2 different things, you can then debate which one actually is controlling.
Yeah. Any further questions or comments? Are we ready for a motion?
Yes. Can we make a motion?
I would appreciate it.
I move to recommend that the select board adopt a necessity resolution and the declaration of official intent for the water line replacement project on Tilden Avenue and portions of Cochran Road and Bridge Street.
Thank you, Morgan. Do we have a second?
Second, this is Jay.
Thank you, Jay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, calling the motion to a vote. Please identify yourself and signify your vote.
This is Jay. Aye.
Morgan, I.
Aaron, I.
Bard, aye.
And this is David. Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, moving on to D. Update on wastewater overflow incident. On Friday, December 23rd, the Richmond wastewater system experienced a wastewater overflow at the manhole south of the Bridge Street Bridge. This incident was caught early and was stopped within an hour. The proper steps have been taken to report the incident to the Vermont Department of Environmental Conservation Watershed Management Division. The overflow did run into a storm drain and ultimately into the river. Initially, it was thought that the incident was caused by a check valve not operating correctly in the pump station that is designed to send wastewater to the wastewater treatment facility. Upon further investigation with a technician on December 29th, it was determined that a solenoid failed. The solenoid is designed to create a vacuum, which when sealed allows for an air compressor to create pressure to send the wastewater back to the treatment facility. The solenoid failed because the line that it is located in became flooded, and this then allowed for wastewater to flow back into the manhole and created the overflow. The solenoid began operating again correctly once the line was free of wastewater. As a precaution, PNP Septic was called to pump the line every few hours overnight on the 23rd and into the morning of December 24th. Staff examined the station on the morning of December 24th, and it was operating correctly, and P&P was called off the job. The pump technician examined the pump station on December 29th and will return the week of January 3rd through 6th this week to replace worn parts of the system to help prevent a future incident from occurring. Questions, comments? Yes, Aaron.
I have a question. How often could this happen again that a solenoid could fail? Is this like a common thing or does it, Alan? I don't know if you know.
It could happen whenever the power, when you have a massive power change going on off from the power goes out to anything electronic, and then that stuff can, from any power blip that goes through.
Yeah, so I think a couple of things happened here. Yeah, the power went off, which sort of helped exacerbate it. And kind of back to the previous agenda topic or two ago, the increased flow from the rain that day was also filling the pipe up, which helped cause some of that flooding. So the technician is going to be able to replace the solenoid and a few other parts to make sure that it's operating correctly. It is operating correctly now, but he's going to make sure that the worn parts are replaced. I think we have one update. Alan, you called me earlier today. The parts actually have a little bit more of a lead time than initially thought. So I think there's a sensor that's not going to be able to get replaced for, I think, what'd you say, about 6 weeks, Alan, is what we're waiting on for lead time on that.
What was it? The switch, was it one switch is $1,550, and it's a 6 to 8 week lead time.
Right. So unfortunately, the repair is going to be a little bit longer than we had hoped, but we are doing what we can to get it repaired as quickly as possible. And we'll continue to monitor and make sure that, especially in high rain events, and if we lose power, that we're making sure that this doesn't happen again.
We should probably revisit spare parts and anticipate what we should have on hand to, I mean, we can't prevent everything from happening in the future, but we can make educated guesses on what we should have on hand for spare parts, should we need them in a pinch in the future.
Yeah, Alan, I think that part of the order we're getting in is going to be having some spare parts for these exact pieces, right? Yeah.
Yep.
I would suggest taking the existing switch that we're replacing and holding that as a spare for backup.
What was it? The biggest thing with the existing switch, it's an old mercury switch, because that's an old pump station that dates back to the Korean War. So finding the right one's the hard part.
A well-contained, totally encapsulated mercury switch. Anything else on the overflow?
Kara has a question.
Oh, go ahead, Kara.
Josh had said the increased rain filled the sewer pipe.
The flow, yeah.
The
It didn't
increased
need-
flow, yeah.
So there's definitely a stormwater issue then on the other side of the river that you definitely got to resolve. And that's what added to this problem then. Okay, I just wanted to connect, because what you were saying was stormwater is filling your sewer pipes, and it's on the other side of the river, and I thought that system was newer, sorry. Gotcha.
One can surmise or hypothesize that it's on both sides of the river, and
Yeah.
it's sort of to then scan through it and say, where is it? Where is it not?
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, it came from the other side. It's the hill on the other side of the river coming down.
Everybody sees stormwater in the village. Yeah, I mean, in the portion of the village where you got parking lots and all of that kind of stuff, and lo and behold, so that's great that you're getting a stormwater letter out.
Yeah.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Any other questions or comments on the overflow? Okay,
It did seem, Alan, like you guys did a really good job, and I feel as though we deserve to compliment you and the guys from the town, the road commission that helped you as well. It seemed like that all was handled really well, and especially right there by the holiday. You guys did a nice job.
yeah. It's always good to debrief when unfortunate things happen and recognize what went well and make sure that that's recognized so it can happen again in the future. Meg, I see you have your hand up. Oh, is that that's a thumbs up? Okay. Thank you. Any other questions or comments on the overflow? Okay. Moving on to 3E, follow up on confirming the number of residential and commercial accounts at each property. Okay, so included in the packet is the data from the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission on commercial and residential units in the water and sewer district. Josh also included an email from Melanie Needle from the CCRPC, which explains some of the nuances of the data. Josh asked Finance Director Connie Bona to create a list from NEMRIC so we could see what we have on file for each property. This list only provides parcel ID numbers and not physical addresses. We have a request into NEMRIC to help us create a report that will show addresses for each parcel so we can better compare the NEMRIC data with the data from the CCRPC. If NEMRIC is unable to help with such a report, we can manually create physical addresses from the parcel IDs, but it would be time consuming. Josh has not spent a lot of time with this data yet, but it seems that the E911 data may be best for businesses. It seems like there are discrepancies between the CCRPC data and the E911 data for residentials. Once we have the data from our system, we can compare all three lists and see which properties are consistent on all three lists, and then look more into specific properties that have discrepancies. Connie can probably pull the data from our system fairly quickly, but she's off until Wednesday. Josh will try to get that from her this week so we can begin comparison. Questions, comments, thoughts? Josh?
So one update to that, since I wrote this last week, we were able to get a report from NEMRIC that actually has addresses, and it has number of fixed costs for water, fixed costs for sewer. I sent that out to the commission and added that to the packet here this afternoon once we got that in. And I think that looking at that, we'll just need, I'm sure there's some Excel tricks that we can use or some tools to kind of merge the data and figure out a real good way to compare it. But I'm feeling confident that we have a few very good lists to work with.
I had a chance to look over that list in some detail, and I think it is going to be tremendously useful. If Josh, do you mind showing that for just a second? People can see.
Which list do you want me to pull up, the NEMRIC list or the CCRPC list or both?
NEMRIC list, the one that you sent this afternoon.
Yeah.
So,
And
you can,
and also a note, this does have property owner names and business names on it. I just sorted that out for posting it publicly on the website. But as far as cross-referencing business names, we'll be able to do that too. So where do you want me to go, Jay?
I was just gonna say, it has the addresses, and it also has, there are a few cases where if you sort of the post office box one, you go, how is the post office box getting water and sewer? But then the location code over here tells you exactly what it is. So this, even the ones that look like they don't have data, sometimes can actually do. I know they're in here somewhere.
Yeah, let me find them.
David, while we're looking, Josh, is it fair to say that this is a work in progress and this is illustrative of the task, but not the completed task?
Correct. Yeah, we've basically got the tools and now we need to kind of dig in, and we have the materials, and now we need to figure out how to compare it all.
I started playing around with it a little bit in Excel today, just for the business ones. Because there's significantly less of those than the residential. And I'm not an Excel expert, but I know just enough to do some things. And you can already see that there is definitely some overlapping with the report that Josh has that has the names of the businesses on it. Between the three reports, I think we have a lot of good information and can easily compare them. I can show you what I did too if you look at it, but.
And then the example row that I just want to call people's attention to, you notice there are some entries that say PO Box. And if you of course know who is it, PO Box 285, you wouldn't have to ask. But the location code over here, BR0203, that means 203 Bridge Street.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
And those correspond with the
Yeah.
tax location numbers on the map.
Yeah, and a lot of those PO boxes are town accounts. So 203 Bridge Street is in town center. There's another one for the fire station and for highway.
And then,
But yeah, the parcel ID will help us identify.
and in column C, you're going, what on earth is all that? There's also a key that Josh sent out that explains what all those little word acronyms mean. So we can say who's just water, who's just sewer, who's basically documents, because somebody could be listed here 4 times because they've got 4 different services.
And there are definitely a lot of people that do have all 4, and I think that with the business ones, that's important cross-reference.
Yeah, I can. Oh. Sorry, I didn't want to speak over anybody. I was gonna say, I can take some time to look at these and try to figure out the best way to compare them. But obviously I know some people are more skilled at Excel than I am. So looking at you, Jay, if you've got any brilliant ideas on how to run tables, to merge things, I definitely take any help we can get.
Yeah, I think something could be done with the VLOOKUP. It's just a matter of me having some time to do it.
Jay, is there a unique identifier across all 3 data sets that then becomes the link across the data sets, like customer number?
Probably just the address.
Does the
Yeah.
water sewer
No.
doesn't?
So a part of this is filling in. So if you don't have a common unique identifier across all 3 data sets, you have to do some work to match up the records, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the address seems to be the easiest because like the E911 people don't have the codes for
Right,
the
yeah, yeah.
account numbers.
So a little bit of work, and so the most important step is the first one, right? We've taken the first one.
Yeah.
And so if we keep pursuing this journey, I'm optimistic that over time we'll first get a single data set and then after that be able to work on cleaning it up or filling in blanks. I'm not surprised when I scan through, there are data entry errors and omissions, which is what I would expect to see in a data set that is manually entered by different people over a period of time.
Yeah.
But I'm pleased that, since we have a change in leadership at the Water and Sewer Department, that the things that we were told, oh, that's not really necessary for so many years, that we are beginning to get called out.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions or comments on residential and commercial accounts?
I just took out some of the columns to make it easier to compare information because all the addresses are in both.
Moving on to 3F, update on Chittenden County Solid Waste District Biosolids Management Agreement. The Chittenden Solid Waste District goes out to bid for disposal of biosolids from wastewater treatment facilities in Chittenden County. The current agreement with Casella, included in the packet, expires on January 31st, 2024. CSWD met with all participating water treatment facilities to discuss the process to get back out to bid. There was concern that the only other bidder may be Englobe, which is located in Canada. If the district contracted with Englobe, there is concern about potentially running into issues if the border closes again, perhaps due to a pandemic. And also if PFAS regulations tighten in Canada, which could restrict biosolids from Vermont, that would be too high in PFAS content. Josh Tyler from the CSWD is reaching out to Englobe to see what the potential is that they would bid. Tyler is also reaching out to Casella to see what rates they would provide if we decided to extend the contract without going out to bid. Now, Josh, do we have any idea how PFAS figures into this? It's bubbling up to the top of concern. I know Casella's landfill sends leachate to Montpelier, but the state just said that Montpelier can't accept it without the PFAS being treated beforehand. So that might be into play across the board for everybody. Do we have any updated PFAS information?
So I don't have I won't claim to have a complete understanding of how the PFAS plays into this, and as far as how different areas will or won't accept it and at what level. I do remember reading through some of the material that Josh Tyler provided, and there was concern from Englobe's part that I think it was either going to be a provincial law or maybe a national law in Canada that was going to really lower the limits of PFAS. And so that's where I think there was some concern that if they got into a contract and then that law went into effect and the PFAS from Vermont was too high, there could be potential problems down the road. So that's about as much knowledge as I have as far as technicalities. Alan might know more, and I know Morgan was at the meeting too. Maybe he knows a little bit more about it, but that's about the extent of my knowledge on that topic.
Now, a lot of this is happening as we speak. PFAS is sort of becoming an issue. Alan, did you have anything to add to that, or is this really too new to have any information on?
It really depends on the way also the state of Vermont goes on it. It could impact your wastewater, it could impact the sludge, and also we got something where we also get to do more PFAS testing for water too.
Right. Okay, any more comments or discussion on?
Well, just to point out that if it comes down to one bidder, you can imagine there's going to be a significant price increase.
Yeah,
So I think that's one of the major concerns there.
Well, first, it's one bidder, but we're part of a herd here. We're
Right.
not like off by ourselves bidding ourselves. We're part of the solid waste district,
Yeah.
so.
I think that it seemed like a couple of things that came up in that meeting. One, that Maine is shipping its stuff over to Vermont. And yes, so it's so that may be pushing up some of the pressure as well as processing it. So there's, as I guess, and again, I don't understand all the restrictions through EPA on what you can dump or and what additional processing you have to do in order to comply. But so there are pressure from out of state. I made the comment of passing a law that says Maine cannot ship their, you know what, here to Vermont anymore. But
These are biosolids that they're shipping.
I think that's correct, you know, that it was, I wish, and maybe Josh, you remember this better, it was as though there was no facility in Maine to take the biosolids.
and we send ours to New York. Maine was sending it to Vermont or through Vermont to New York.
Oh, I thought it was coming here to Vermont, but maybe you're correct.
My recollection is what you described, that it spread somewhere else, but
Yeah,
Nonetheless, right, if even as a group of 4 or 5 people or entities within Chittenden County Waste District, even with that many, there still was no leverage on the
Yeah.
pricing unless Canada would, you know, that was a confirmed legal option that they could shut you down if something came up again.
okay. Competitive group of one.
Yes, that's right.
Are we ready to move on?
Yes.
3G update on next steps for the Gateway project. This project has stalled after we looked at including the potential for some funding from the Community Recovery and Revitalization Program, and the cost of bond payback was still prohibitive. We did not apply for that grant because there did not appear to be an appetite to do so at the meeting where it was last discussed. The select board did briefly discuss the possibility of using ARPA funds to help pay for this project. It seemed as though that the only way this project would be fundable as a public project would be with a large influx of funding from a source such as ARPA. Another option is to work with the REAPs for a private service to their property from the public portion of the system by the school. That's the update on the Gateway. Questions, comments, thoughts?
I had a chance to talk to a Joy Reed. And
Something you can share in this meeting or?
I believe
Okay.
so briefly. They are prepared to go ahead and run the line for the school.
Okay.
They feel that they've given us more than adequate time to figure it out. And they have been being polite for, as they see it, 8 years. And they're like, if you guys aren't going to fish or cut bait, we're going to run the line. And that's kind of where things stand. Is the awkward thing about that from a larger point of view is, since it would be a continuation, it would not be able to connect to the school's line. It has to be a line straight from over in Jericho Road. They cannot then turn around and connect other people beyond that point because you can't do that.
Yeah.
So if the Reaps run a line, it's a line that basically benefits them and no one else along just for NFI, no one else along Route 2 can tie onto it.
Right. 'Cause it's a private line.
But at this point, we haven't done any other plans for how to run it along Route 2. And so at this point, if we say to the Reaps, nope, we're not running anything along Route 2, the money isn't there, they're going to run the line. And then if at some point we do somehow get a line run along Route 2, we won't be able to say to the Reaps, here, help pay for it.
Right.
Because they will then already be customers. So that's kind of where things stand. The Reaps are like, if you're not going to come up with something soon, we're going to start digging. And that's their prerogative. They've been more than polite about the last several years where we keep saying, give us a little longer, and then we never have anything.
With just the caveats, this is part of permitting and connection and inspection and engineering all this stuff. It feels like we've gone around this barn at least 4 times during my time on the Water Sewer Commission. Every time we think there might be a light at the end of the tunnel, it goes out. And it boils down to money. The current folks, there are other customers, just to be clear, other customers on Route 2 have approached us and really want a line to go by their house. But we cannot figure out a way to make it economically viable. The business model just doesn't work.
Right.
In a way that I can see it. And it's also timing for the Reaps. The Reaps have been delayed a couple of times by a couple of factors, including this. And so I think, I sort of call the question, is it time for us to sort of declare victory and go home? To quote a former Vermont senator, like, I can't figure out how to make this work. I
think that there's no way that we get everything we want. The Reaps have the right to run a line.
Yep.
We have no right to tell them not to. And we have no right to say, do it in such a way that we can tie onto it, because that's not how things work. I think we should say to the Reaps, we're sorry that we strung you along for 8 years. It didn't work out. Go ahead and start digging, so to speak.
I will only soften that by saying it's not just us.
I know.
Your predecessors on this Water Sewer Commission. It's other customers who have come to us both in public and in private and said, can you figure out how to make this work for us?
Yeah.
So,
and I wish we could.
Yeah.
The history is sort of long and tortured, but all that said, I'll be clear, every time, it seems to me every time we think there's a light at the end of the tunnel,
it's a train.
It's illusory. There's nothing. It's a flashlight. There's no there. And people are interested, but not interested to the economic scale required to make the project work in terms of other customers. There's no deep pockets. There's no daddy warbucks. There's no. So I think, reaching sort of the point where, and the Reaps have talked to us a couple of times about milestones or forks in the road. And I think we should sort of declare victory or admit defeat and say, we can't figure out a way to make this work, knowing what we know today and with the funds available today.
Correct. I agree.
And then from my perspective, it's giving the Reaps a green light to do what they do within the constraints of the regulations. They will have to connect all the way up through the school property. They'll have to make arrangements with the school, but they get a green light to proceed on their own up the hill through the easement. And a reminder to folks, the easement through the conserved property as worded restricts the lines for the use of that property, not to extend to other places. So that's all these roads seem to lead us in the same direction. I'll make one other point that if the mobile station, which is still in play, and I haven't closely followed where they sit with their permitting, but their plan was to horizontal bore underneath the interstate to a leach field on the other side of the interstate. And presumably it's a green light for them to do that,
Right.
as long as they have all the permits and engineering in place as well.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. That's pretty much where we stand.
And then the third piece, I'd say, it seems pretty clear that leaves all the other property owners in the gateway on their own. They can do what they want with each other. People sometimes share leach fields, but there is no public water sewer system that I think in any near-term arrangement is going to reach out to serve those other properties.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It could be possible that in 3 years, the tooth fairy comes along with a huge branch and makes it possible, but we can't tell the roots to wait for the tooth fairy.
Yeah. Or to wait 3 more years.
Mhm.
Okay. Update on the process for hiring a water and wastewater superintendent. Commissioners Jay Furr and Morgan Wilvalier and Josh interviewed 3 candidates on Tuesday, December 20th. Josh is still in the process of finalizing a choice and an offer for a candidate. Josh hopes to have an announcement soon. Josh, Jay, Morgan, any updates?
It's pretty much, we were very impressed with the candidates. Josh is in negotiations with one particular one now, and I'll leave the rest to Josh, what he feels he can say.
Yeah, I think that's basically the update right now. Just trying to kind of work through the process. Nothing to announce just yet.
But we should know one way or the other very soon, like in the order of days, hopefully.
Great.
David, I'll only add that the name Josh J. Morgan sounds like a country music star.
It does, doesn't it?
Or,
3 last names.
or a railroad
3
baron.
first names.
Sorry, like railroad barons.
Moving on to approval of minutes, warrants, and purchase orders. Let's start with the minutes of December 19th. Did everybody have a chance to read through the draft presented to us?
Yeah, they look, I did not see anything I felt was needing to be corrected.
Motion to approve the minutes as presented. This is Bart.
This is Jay, second.
Thank you, Bart. Thank you, Jay. So the motion is to approve the minutes as presented for the December 19th meeting. Absent any further discussion, are we ready to move the motion to a vote? Sounds like we are. So this is a motion to approve the minutes of the December 19th Water and Sewer Commission.
This is Jay, I.
Morgan, I.
Aaron, I.
Bart, aye.
And this is David. Aye. Minutes have been approved. Everybody have a chance to look at the warrants? I did not because I was having iPad trouble.
It's a very short list this time, and there's
On my
nothing,
computer.
Oh, I got them now, but
yeah, there's nothing on the warrant list I thought looked unusual.
okay.
I did notice that they still have Greg on there instead of Morgan.
True, you're right.
Okay.
We got Greg and Aaron on warrants.
Aaron, I caught that this afternoon. To the one that's in the packet for signature actually has your name on it and Morgan's name on it. We got it corrected finally, but thanks for noticing.
It's just, actually, do me a favor, would you mind sharing the warrant list real quick, Josh, for a second, just for public reference? I'm gonna go up to the, well, yeah, but go up to the top. I just wanted to call attention, we see the bottom line is 23,903.76. But if you look here, the 3 largest expenditures are extraordinary in that, well, the water leak was something that we didn't, that's the Tilden water link, right?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah. And the 4175 down below, we know what that is, we just discussed that. So these are expenses that were not foreseeable, but we did have the money for.
22,000.
Yeah.
Was the hydrant replacement part of the water leak or was that just a preventative maintenance replacement?
That was not part of the leak. That's actually a hydrant up near the highway department that we discovered was not operating correctly. So it's been on the list to replace for a few months and we got it replaced recently.
So we do have placeholders in the budget for these expenses. We expect these
Sure.
expenses to come up. So these specific expenses aren't line itemed in the budget, but they do come
Right.
out of budget lines for such
Right,
expenses.
we do have the money, it's just stuff we all think would rather not have had to spend, but when the time came, we could afford it.
Jay, I think it was just the way you had said it with, they were unexpected, and so
Well,
what David is saying is they were planned for maintenance emergency situations kind of thing. I think that's where it might be confusing for somebody to try to understand what the two of you are both saying.
Sure, I probably could have said that better. The difference is, some of these lines we're paying for chemicals. Some of these lines we're paying for a big water leak that was intimately timed, but at least it happened in the middle of the day.
Yeah.
We should try to arrange that in the future, have all water leaks happen in the middle of the day.
We could
Absolutely.
schedule them better.
Yeah,
I will observe that one of the credit to the previous water sewer superintendent, one of the things that we've tried to do over my tenure here is to replace the oldest leakiest lines. And so the frequency of these unexpected events at $8,000 or $10,000 has gone down over time.
quite a bit.
It's not lost on us that this is the same water line that's due for replacement. The engineering work is going on right now. What's the date of that line?
The forties.
Yeah,
Mhm.
very brittle cast iron,
Cast
if I
iron.
recall.
Yeah. Cast iron doesn't go through freeze thaw cycles very well. Are we comfortable moving approval of the warrants?
I move we approve the warrants as presented.
Morgan, I second.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Morgan. Please identify yourself and signify your vote.
This is J.I.
Morgan, I.
Aaron, I.
Bard, aye.
And this is David. Aye. Warrants are approved. Now, Josh, there are no purchase orders tonight, correct? Correct.
Correct.
Okay, items for next meeting.
This is Bard, David. It seems like we have the meter data collection, which is resurrected,
Right.
but arguably new, even though it's sort of old. And the updates on the progress on the number of residential and commercial accounts. Some of the
Yeah, I
data we
will-
looked at.
Hopefully I'll have some time to do some Excel mongering. And I'm sure Aaron is going to be looking too, so hopefully between us, we can get some progress on that.
Those are the two that I had. Anything else?
You have to issue an official letter to the REAPs to move forward, or?
I don't think so. I think they,
My understanding is they approach us.
yeah.
Right.
So they would say, this is what we intend to do. Ellen, maybe you have any comments, or maybe that's something to talk about next time, given our time right now.
Yeah,
Let's talk about what is the process for that, Josh and Ellen, like, how do they approach us? What's our role? Because mostly a private project, then it's just making sure that it meets our specs and requirements, right?
yeah. Okay, in
I
the
move we
interest
adjourn.
of time, thank you, Jay.
I second.
Thank you, Morgan. So motion is for adjournment. Please identify yourself and signify your vote.
This is J.I.
Morgan, I.
Aaron, I.
Bard, aye.
And this is David. Aye, we are adjourned at 6:59 PM. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
In that
Josh?
number.